I'm a criminal for quitting smoking the only way I could. Those are the words of a young Australian, Alison Paul, arguing the case for e-cigarettes containing nicotine, saying they were the only thing that managed to allow her to quit smoking after so many attempts, after so many years. At the moment, though, it's illegal to possess them in Australia, and yet some say e-cigarettes are the most effective way of kicking a real cigarette habit. Well, one person who is keen to see the end of the ban is David Leyonhjelm. He's the Liberal Democrat Senator and, of course, joins us from Canberra. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, you think the ban should be lifted?
Yes, I do. I think Australia is well out of step with the rest of the world. People in other countries are using it to quit smoking. Many of them are finding it effective. Not everyone, of course. And I think it's quite sad that Australians don't have that option.
Well, most countries, you're now allowed to buy them and smoke them, are you?
I don't know whether it's most or not. Certainly countries that we compare ourselves with, that's the case. The UK, New Zealand is about to legalise it, Canada, the US, most of Europe. I was in Italy 12 months ago, and there are shops that sell all the various flavours of vaping liquids. Not all of them contain nicotine, but many do. There are big companies and little companies getting involved, and they are replacing cigarettes in many countries.
Yeah, everyone agrees it's healthier than smoking a real cigarette. It's not risk-free, though, and that's part of the problem, isn't it?
Well, it's not risk-free, but I think it's the UK Public Health Association, or England Public Health Association, says that it's probably about 95% safer than smoking. The point is, inhaling nicotine has a level of risk involved. Nicotine is an addictive chemical, and it's not without a level of risk. But by only inhaling nicotine and not all the other components of smoke, you are avoiding all the other risks that are associated when you smoke a cigarette. And, we really don't even understand what the risks are.
Yeah, of course, the case against real cigarettes has been made, and isn't that the point? Anti-smoking activists might say, we've finally got smoking down on the ground, we're about to choke the life out of it. The smoking rates are now down well under 20%, I think, in this country. Yes. We're about to extinguish it as normal. Why let it in the back door again through e-cigarettes?
Well, I don't think it is letting it in the back door. There's no evidence that that's the case. There's been quite a number of studies looking at whether people progress from vaping, from inhaling nicotine vapour, to smoking cigarettes. And you can't say it never occurs, but certainly all the evidence suggests that it's very rare. People are actually moving from smoking cigarettes to vaping, and then sometimes they move on to nothing, or sometimes they just stick with vaping, which, from a health point of view, is probably not perfect, but it's a vast improvement on inhaling tobacco smoke.
Okay, but they might have otherwise given up entirely, as tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Australians have over the last decade or two.
Yeah, well, I think that's wishful thinking, quite frankly. We've had slowly declining rates of smoking now for about the last 2 decades. And yet we have other countries with lower smoking rates. We do know that nicotine substitutes can have a dramatic effect on smoking rates. Sweden is a very good example. The rate of smoking in Sweden is just 5%. Now, the main reason for that is that you can buy snus, which is a tobacco alternative, which you put inside your mouth and it sort of absorbs through your mucous membrane. Mm-hmm. So you get your nicotine fix out of that without smoking tobacco. So what that demonstrates is that if you have an alternative way of delivering nicotine, a less harmful way of doing it, you end up with a much lower smoking rate. Now, smoking, as I said, is falling in Australia slowly, but we've had nicotine patches and various other anti-smoking options available now for quite a while now, and yet the smoking rate is still only falling very slowly.
Okay, I mean, if your real concern is with the smoking rate and helping it fall further, maybe there should be a prescription thing where you can buy them, but you need to get a prescription from your doctor as part of a process of giving up smoking.
Well, yes, a lot of people say that's overkill. There's not much risk involved in vaping. So why would you want to do that? There's much more risky things you can buy from the supermarket or from a chemist shop than a vaping solution. So, I think if you want to quit, there should be a range of options available for you. There's nothing wrong with trying the gums and patches and things like that if they get you off cigarettes entirely and off nicotine entirely, then all good. But I don't think we should be passing judgment on how people quit smoking as long as they do quit smoking. And if there's a 95% safer option, which vaping is, and the rest of the world is saying, look, this is better than smoking tobacco, even if it's not perfect, I don't think Australians should be holding their nose and saying, no, it's not for us.
All right. Senator David Leyonhjelm is here, the Liberal Democrat senator from Canberra. Just before you go, you're not Italian, are you, or Swedish, or what's the story?
Big long name like mine is not Italian; it's Swedish.
So, are we? Did Mum sign you up for Swedish citizenship? Are we sure?
I'm a fifth-generation Australian, so if I got signed up for citizenship, it would have occurred a long time ago.
David Leyonhjelm, I just have to ask, you understand. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure.
There you go, David Leyonhjelm. He might be the only senator left by the end of the week. We'll see. But the Liberal Democrat senator, with his views about e-cigarettes, says Australia should take up the lead of other countries and free their use. What do you think? 1300 222 702. You're listening to ABC Radio Sydney. Simon Chapman is a professor of public health at Sydney University. He's been a long time opponent of smoking, a person involved in the public health battles which have achieved a pretty low smoking rate in this country. He's on the line. Hi, Simon.
G'day, Richard.
Now, 98% safer option, says David Leyonhjelm. That's worth embracing, isn't it?
That figure emerged out of an invitation-only meeting, which was backed by one of the tobacco companies. I didn't get an invitation. I don't know anyone who did. And out of that, miracle upon miracles, we got this 95% figure, safer. But Senator Leyonhjelm, who some call the senator for Philip Morris because he has a big donation from them every year, made the statement that we don't know what the risks are. And of course we don't. I mean, if someone had stood up in 1920, 10, 15 years after tailor-made cigarettes first hit the decks and said, I think these things are pretty safe. We're not seeing any cases of lung cancer or heart disease, so let's just do what history did and allow them to be advertised, sold, flavoured, the works. People would go, well, that was one of the biggest mistakes of the 20th century. Are we seriously going to make the same mistake again with e-cigarettes?
I mean, the trouble is we know, you and I have talked so much about how dangerous cigarettes are. If there's a chance that this is a way for people to get off them, that's worth being enthusiastic about, isn't it?
Well, I think my position is that if they are good at getting people off smoking, and that's by no means obvious, I'll come to that in a minute, and if they are as safe as 95%, people like Leyonhjelm saying, then those claims ought to be put to the umpire in Australia, which is the Therapeutic Goods Administration, and of course that happened last year, and they reviewed it and they said, no, we think that it shouldn't be just let loose on the market, but that if manufacturers want to come along and put all that evidence in front of us, we will consider it like any other therapeutic good. I mean, if someone came along tomorrow and said, look, I've got a cancer cure, I've got an asthma cure, I've got an AIDS cure, this is so important that we need to go beyond and round the corner from the TGA and just let it be sold in petrol stations, newsagents and 7-Elevens, people would say, hang on a second, that's not the way we regulate therapeutic goods.
And yet, I'm going on what David said, but the UK, Canada, New Zealand, all these quite similar countries have made the decision to allow the sale of these products.
Yeah, well, the USA, Senator Leyonhjelm didn't mention that the Food and Drug Administration have got what they call the deeming rule, and they're going to require manufacturers over there to sort of answer all the questions that I've just sort of put to you. And in England, where they have jumped into the kind of open market situation, Professor Robert West, who would be the leading researcher of tobacco in the United Kingdom, is the editor-in-chief of Addiction. He published a paper just a couple of years ago which showed that in a population of 8.46 million smokers, in 1 year only 16,000 quit smoking because of e-cigarettes. Now, you do the maths, that is a homeopathically small number of people. And, yes, smoking's going down in Australia, and it is going down slowly, but we are right near the front of the pack. Canada is doing better than us. California is doing better than us. We're neck and neck with the UK. So all this talk about, it's doom and gloom, we need to sort of get something new. Okay, if we do need to have something new, allow them to do what every other manufacturer of therapeutic goods does and take their claims to the TGA. That's what happened with nicotine replacement therapy. It was first of all a prescribed drug, and then it went over the counter, and now you can even buy it in supermarkets because the evidence about safety and effectiveness came through after all those years.
Okay, but they had to prove it first. With us is Simon Chapman, Professor of Public Health at Sydney University. We're talking about this debate, which has been held in lots of countries around the world. Do you let e-cigarettes in? Are they worth it because they can help get people off the cigarettes? Or is it really normalising smoking just at the point where smoking was already in its death throes? 1300 222 702 is the number. Sue is here from Marsfield. Hi, Sue.
Hi, Richard.
Yeah, you've done some vaping yourself.
I've been vaping for 4 years, and in that 4 years, I haven't had any cigarettes at all. So I've tried patches, and I tried gum, and I tried the tablets, and I'm afraid I was a recidivist on those. I just couldn't keep off the cigarettes, but with vaping, I have managed to keep off cigarettes, and my doctor is in agreement that it's much healthier for me to do this.
Okay, technically it's illegal though, isn't it?
Not without nicotine. It's not illegal. With nicotine, it is, but you don't have to have the nicotine. You can have it without nicotine.
Sure, but are you managing to find some nicotine ones?
I have a very low level of nicotine, and but every time I get more juice, I lower my level of nicotine. Now, according to my information, the Surgeon General of the United Kingdom is quite happy for e-cigarettes to be used. So that's the information that I've got. And as I said, my GP is in agreement that it's
fine. And do you think you'll vape forever, or do you think it is a bridge to, not smoking in any form for you?
My understanding is that I suffer from depression, chronic depression, and my understanding is that the head psychiatrist of the organisation that is the umbrella organisation for psychiatry is absolutely furious about the fact that they're not allowing e-cigarettes to be used for psychiatric patients because they are, of all people who really sort of require that more than anybody else, it's people who have mental health issues, because for some reason it does soothe you, and I find that I have to say I find it very soothing, and I probably don't want to stop altogether. No.
So because it's a helpful thing, Sue. Thanks so much, Simon. These are. I started with David with that case of a woman called Alison Paul who's talked to the ABC reporters and said, she feels like she's a criminal for quitting the only way she can, which is using these cigarettes, which are illegal in this country.
Well, that's why I'm in favour of them being regulated. If they can pass the tests of safety and efficacy, then fine. Let's have them available like many drugs which aren't sold, across the counter, but are sold on prescription because of their potential for abuse.
Okay, but first they've got to prove their case, you say?
Yeah, that's right. People ring up and say, look, I use this method or that method to quit smoking, but people don't ring up who used them and failed. That's not news. It's not a message that people want to be told. And so, if someone rang up in a minute and said, well, look, I used, swung a dead cat around my head, or went to have laser therapy, or one of those sort of bodgy evidence-free approaches, some people would go, oh, gee, I might try that. And some people might, want to try e-cigarettes. Well, fine. If they are safe and if they are effective, and that can be proved through the umpire that we've got that's been around for. I mean, the umpire was established in this country after the thalidomide tragedy, because thalidomide was promoted and sold as something which wasn't a problem, and of course that's history now.
Okay.
And
the evidence, you say,
Yep.
not there yet. Hey, Simon, thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard.
This is Simon Chapman from Sydney University. He's the Professor of Public Health, with the view also of David Leyonhjelm, the Liberal Democrat Senator, who believes the e-cigarettes should be legalised, as they have been in some other jurisdictions. It's currently 3 here on ABC Radio Sydney. The traffic.
Traffic, ABC Radio Sydney.